Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. I'm very excited about today's show because not only am I going to be celebrating an incredible player in the theater community, but she also happens to be a friend, and that's Dori Berinstein. Now, Dori Berinstein has just arrived in the studio. Here she is. Hello, Dori.
Hey, Richard.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Thank you.
You know, it's a rainy day here in New York City, and about 10 minutes ago, Dori says, I'm running a little late, but I'll be there. And right here on the dot, like a true professional, she shows up. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful to see you.
It is so good to see you. Before we start, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that today marks 245 days since our theaters shut down. And that, of course, includes all the people around the theater community, the restaurants and the ticket takers and the box office and every single player in the theater community. So as you go through your day, please take a moment to pause and think of all of these people. It's not just the people you see on stage, it's the people you see behind the scenes. And Dori, you're on both sides, and we're going to talk about that. But before we start, I want to ask you, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy world that we find ourselves in?
I'm very fortunate. I have been very safe and surrounded by family, and but I've been just so concerned about our community and the world, and just wanting to do as much as possible to help, to get us through this time and to the other side. And also, I think I've been very fortunate in being able to be surrounded by amazing people in the theater community and work with them to do as much as we can to keep theater alive during this time.
It's like I always say, the theaters may be shut down temporarily, but the ghost lights still shine brightly. And there's a ghost light within each and every one of us in this community. And I want to ask you, what did your calendar look like on March 11th? I know that you were just getting ready to open a couple of shows. Am I correct?
Well, actually, I was in LA. I was working on the Prom movie, and the Prom movie had to shut down. This was the adaptation of our musical, The Prom, and we had 4 days to go, and we had to shut down. And it was not what we didn't see it coming, of course, and so that took everybody by surprise. So I was in Los Angeles. And so I came back to New York, and I came back, and literally on that Monday, my daughter was directing her first show in New York, and we were at the opening night of her show, and then literally that shut down 4 days later. Because it had to, and that was awful. And I had a play that I was working to bring to Broadway, and a tour of the Prom that we were planning on taking out that we obviously were not able to do. So there was a lot that came to a standstill, and I was also working on several documentary films that we were shooting around the world, and we had to, at least for the moment, pause until we could figure out how to do that remotely. And it was a quick learning curve.
Now, one of the questions that I ask everyone is how they're keeping the creativity going during this time frame. But you have the Broadway Podcast Network. So tell us a little bit about that, how it got started, what's going on with that, and what you're excited about what's coming up in the future with the Broadway Podcast Network.
Sure. The Broadway Podcast Network is around a year old, and it came out of the just love of storytelling, and the belief that we have the best storytellers in the world in the theater community, and wanting to really not in any way take away from theater, but to be additive, and to give our community a new way to connect and interact and tell stories. And I found myself, because I live outside the city, and I found myself driving home from theater so many nights of the week, sitting in my driveway at 1:30 in the morning, listening to podcasts, and they weren't done yet. And so I was just, so lost to those podcasts that I just, was sitting in my driveway at ridiculous hours. But I realized also, that I couldn't find theater podcasts. They were out there, but there was like one, they were so hard to find. And I had met Alan Seals, who was at Google doing Google Talks, and we both had the same frustration. We wanted more theater podcasts, and we just decided to dive in and do something about it. And so we now have 95 plus podcasts,
Wow.
incredible podcasts from so many people in our community. There are talk shows. There are, people who are getting into the business, guiding people. There are parodies, there are musicals, there are plays. We just launched a soap opera, and it's just filled with all the celebrities in our community, and producers have podcasts, and shows have podcasts. So there's something for everybody, and it's the Broadway Podcast Network. And we're about to launch all sorts of new things that will expand our programming that I'm so excited about. What's been fascinating is that during COVID, when COVID hit, podcasting dropped off by around 20%, because
Really?
people listen to their podcasts often while they're commuting, and they were not commuting anymore for that period of time. But we skyrocketed, because I think our community is so much about connectivity and coming together, and
community. That's the operative
community. Word. Yes, exactly. And so it was very thrilling to see our world respond and really feel like we were helping people stay connected and keeping theater alive during this time. And so we've just doubled down and gone for it. And it's been really exciting to see how all has evolved. And there's so many new initiatives, new programs every day that are coming onto BPN. So we're thrilled.
One of the things that I love about you, Dori, is your passion for this world of the theater. And in my research, you grew up in Los Angeles. Your parents exposed you to theater and the arts at a very early age. You and I had the good fortune of being friends with Carol Channing, who worked tirelessly for arts and education. And I want to talk with you a little bit about the importance of arts and education.
I was 5 years old when I saw Carol in Hello, Dolly in Los Angeles. And, it just captured me. It just completely captured me, and knew.
Could you have ever imagined that, as that little 5-year-old Dori Berinstein sitting in the audience and watching this, that you would go on to become a good friend of hers?
Absolutely not.
I did. Here, I'm going to share of the two of us with Carol. And that was taken in Carol's living room in Rancho Mirage, the day that she got her star on the Palm Springs Walk of Fame.
That's right. It was a very wonderful day. Yeah, no, absolutely. I had no, of course, at 5, I had no idea. I just was captured, and theater. Carol always said that theater is like fertilizer on the brain, and I believe that so deeply. And when I think about my own life and career, well, forget about the career, my own life. Growing up, there was so much storytelling in theater that taught me about the world, that taught me about life, that made me think about things in a different way. And theater is also, education in a whole other way, because it is so collaborative and learning to work with people and studying the craft of theater. You can't, it doesn't make sense to do it alone. It's working and collaborating and I love that so much. And I think that theater just teaches you so much. Theater education in the schools is essential. And that's something that's been so hard during COVID. I know that's been such a loss for kids in school right now, that we have to get back to it big time.
That arts and education always seems to be the first thing that gets cut. And several years ago, I worked as a mentor with the Weston High School. And when they wanted to get new seats for the auditorium, they had to do bake sales and magazine sales and everything they could to raise the money. And yet, when they wanted to get stadium seating for the football field, the money was thrown at them. And it's just something we need to turn around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It just makes such a difference in people's lives. And it doesn't mean like you have any kind of experience or exposure to theater, either in the audience or being on the tech crew or when you're in school or anything. You don't have to be on stage. You don't have to be singing for it to have an impact on you. It is just transporting, and it's all filled with compassion and such. It's so critical. It's just critical, and so I can't wait until kids are able to be back in programs and schools and extracurricular activities and collaborating with each other to even put on shows in their backyard. I think it's just such a great life.
With all the work that you do you ever get a chance to go into the schools and talk to the kids?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And that's been so fulfilling. And we actually have a lot of podcasts, a number of podcasts that really speak to kids and help them engage with the arts. And we have a couple of podcasters who are actually young Broadway stars that are in high school. So there's wonderful ways that kids can connect with kids and talk about the arts and the impact on the arts. I had no talent. I had absolutely no talent. I break windows when I try to sing, and I wasn't at a school.
Dori, as you know, that doesn't stop some people.
Oh my gosh! Well, it stopped me, that's for sure. But in that way,
well, I heard an interview with you some time ago, and I may be paraphrasing, and if I am, please forgive me. But I think it was when you first saw Hello, Dolly, that with everything that was going on stage, you were fascinated with what was going on behind the scenes, how the scenery came out, all the the technology that it took to make that come to life, which is usually not the way that most kids experience the theater the first time they go to the theater. Where does that mind come from?
I don't know, but it's fascinating. This whole show that is in front of you, and their costumes and sets and props and songs. It's like, how did that happen? And how long did it take to come together? I was fascinated.
Is there a defining moment in your life when you said, this is where I want to find myself? This is where I want to be?
Well, I think that I literally can remember that moment going to see Hello, Dolly. I know I was 5 years old, and that makes no sense, but nothing has captured me more than that. That was a very defining moment. I couldn't get enough theater, and it wasn't about being on stage. It was about going to shows. It was about ultimately reading about shows, and then as a filmmaker telling stories about theater. So that really was a defining moment. I think that I didn't grow up in New York, and I didn't grow up around people who were making theater. So it took a while to figure out how to work my way there. But in terms of capturing me and knowing that one way or another, even as an avid theater goer, that theater had to be a major part of my life, it started when I was 5.
Well, let's talk about the path that led you to where you are now. Did you spend your entire childhood in Los Angeles, or did your family move? And how did you end up in New York?
Yes, I grew up in LA, in West LA, and spent a lot of time driving out to the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion to see every show possible. But we also went to theater at UCLA and puppet shows everywhere. We went to theater everywhere. And I ended up in New York because I went to school. I went to college in the East, and then I went to school in the East because my parents thought it'd be wonderful for me to just have that moment of East Coast life and see the leaves change. I don't think they were expecting me to oh, this is amazing. I love it here. So that when you are in school in the East, you're obviously exposed. It was pre-internet, so you're obviously exposed to a lot of opportunities in the East. And so, that's when I really got to see Broadway and see Broadway shows.
What was the first Broadway show that you saw?
Oh, the first Broadway show that I saw was I had won this award, and I was flown to New York and got to spend a week in New York, and we were taken to see a number of shows. And this was definitely a defining moment. We went to see 42nd Street. And it had just opened, and they had just had, with Gower Champion passing away right then and there and everything. They took us onto the stage, and I remember standing there on that stage and seeing the ghost light and seeing the theater and the, just the power of that.
This was at the one.
Just have it. Yeah, it was just so magnificent, and it was just a transformative moment. I just wanted to be part of this world.
And what was your first professional job in this business?
Well, first of all, again, I had no talent, so there was no acting or even trying to audition for anything.
Now, that's a line from Gypsy. Well. You think they've got talent?
Right. So I didn't know anybody. So I had established, I had a career in the film business initially, and had in New York, mainly in Los Angeles, actually. And when I moved back to New York, thinking, okay, if I don't figure out how to work in theater in New York now, I never will, because I was getting very swept up into the film world, And I met a producer who was excited to get involved in film. And I was very involved in film at that point and wanted desperately to get involved in theater. And so we kind of agreed, you come and get involved in what I'm doing, and then take a look. And he was looking at 5 different shows, 5 different possible Broadway shows to develop. And he said, take a look at these and see if there's anything that strikes you. And I just fell madly in love with Bill Irwin and David Shiner, and they were working on Full Moon, and they had just done a very brief piece of that at the Serious Fun Festival, which I had seen, and just oh my gosh. But I didn't have a clue what it meant to produce. I didn't know what I was getting myself into at all. I just knew I wanted to do it. And so Full Moon was my first show, and it was so incredibly dreamy in every possible way, and I've never looked back. That was a long time ago.
I want to talk about the producing aspect of your life in a few moments, but I also want to go back to your film career and these incredible documentaries. I'm lucky enough to be in one, and thank you for that.
My star.
No, not exactly, but thank you. But when you decide to do a documentary on for Carol Channing, for example, in the poster, which you can't see here, is directly in front of me. But when you decide to jump into this, delving into the life of someone like Carol Channing, what was the deciding moment for you? Because it does take a lot of time.
Yeah, it's a massive commitment. It's years and it's a lot of money and it's a lot of everything. But I think with, it's the same thing as with deciding to do a Broadway show. When it's a story that you just have to tell, you have to tell it. And nothing is going to stop you from trying to make it happen.
Did you already have an idea of how that story would unfold? Or did it unfold as you went along?
I never set out, it wasn't like I was sitting around thinking, oh gosh, I'd love to make a documentary about Carol Channing. But I had, for a variety of reasons, I got to know her and we became very good friends, and we would go out to dinner together, and with Harry, her husband at the time. And I remember we were out to dinner at one point and I said, how did you two meet? And they both ended up telling me the story that, oh my gosh, it was the most beautiful, the ultimate love story. And it was like,
we're going to tell everyone to go and watch the documentary.
Yeah, go watch the documentary. It was like, stop talking. I have to get cameras. Stop. And so actually my motivation to make that film, obviously what an extraordinary performer and human being and everything. But I think the tipping point for me was that beautiful relationship, and unexpected. I just had no idea. And light bulbs went off, and it was like, can I tell this story? May I celebrate your life and also tell this story? And I was so fortunate she said yes.
What surprised you most about her working on the film?
Oh, there are a lot of things. I think that, when you are, certainly, I mean, having been a giant fan of Carol since I was 5 years old, and looking up to her and admiring her, these people are larger than life often, and this will sum it up. I think we had finished shooting the documentary. We had just done the last shoot, and I knew we were finally done. And I said, let's go out and have a really special dinner. This is in Palm Springs. I said, let's go out and have a really special dinner and celebrate.
I know where she wanted to go, or do I?
I think you do. I said, where would you like to go? And there were all these amazing, fabulous restaurants in Palm Springs. And she wanted to go to Subway. She just loved this particular sandwich that Subway had. And I was like, okay, let's do it.
We went for breakfast in New York, and I said, Carol and Harry, where would you like to go? And she said, I'm really partial to Subway. Oh, I can't believe it. That's great.
I know. But I think that I probably, before I got to know her, was not expecting such an incredibly grounded, just authentic person, and because her persona was so huge, as you know better than anybody on the planet. It's just it was magnificent, and but at the core, she's just had the biggest heart, and it wasn't about the glitz and the glamour. And the diamonds. It wasn't at all about that, It was just, she was a really grounded, authentic, wonderful
person. What did you learn
person.
about yourself working on this film?
I'm sorry?
What did you learn about yourself working on this film?
I think that one of the other reasons that I was drawn to telling this story is that as a Broadway producer, or I'm, was seeing a lot of young talent that would say, I have a hangnail. I don't think I can perform today. And I knew that Carol had performed in Hello Dolly over 5,000 times without stopping, that she had gone on with a broken arm and with cancer, with having, and then she had fallen into the pit, and all these crazy things that had happened, and there was nothing that was going to stand in the way of her going on. The show must go on, and she just felt that every night was opening night, and
for her, it was always about the audience.
Yeah, and I don't think I discovered anything about myself necessarily, but boy, did that life lesson stay with me, and just how she chose to live her life and honor the audience and honor the art of theater. And I think that has had a huge impact on me in terms of who I want to surround myself with, and how I aspire to live my life.
When it comes to working on a project, and I also love the documentary on Marvin Hamlish and the work that you do, how do you really decide on getting involved in a project? Is there a central or core factor that is an underlying theme with everything you get involved with, or does it vary from project to project?
I think the underlying theme is that giving, as you said, it's so hard. It really is hard and takes a long time. And I think that to make that commitment, you have to know that no matter what, you're going to see this through, that this has to happen, and you want to tell the story. And I wanted very much to celebrate Carol, and I really wanted to honor her and then tell this beautiful love story. And it was, and I knew I was also in a position to be able to do that in a loving, caring way, because I already had a relationship with her. I was already friendly with her. And so I knew where I wanted to go.
Excuse me for interrupting, but did that make it easier or harder to tell the story?
Oh, I think it made it a lot easier, just because there were things I knew about her, and that I wanted to make sure to bring out, that wouldn't, if you didn't know her, and that kind of access, and that kind of maybe the comfort level that she would have with me in telling some intimate stories that she might not otherwise have. So, I think that definitely was helpful. With Marvin, I had been working with Marvin on a musical as his producer, and I adored him. I just adored him. And he also had just moved nearby, and so he would be at my house all the time on the piano. And yes, absolutely. And so I really got to know him. And then when he suddenly passed away, which was so tragic and just in every way, I realized that there were things about him I didn't know that just were remarkable, and that no one knew really, because he kept so quiet about them. And that particularly was his philanthropy. He did not make a big deal out of being so generous to people. But this is a typical Marvin story, that he would get in a cab downtown in New York, and by the time he was uptown, arriving at his home, he had heard about the taxi driver's story about his wife who was ill. And by the time he got out of the cab, he had agreed to do an event to raise money to support their hospital bills. And this isn't stuff that anyone ever knew, but he was doing that sort of thing all the time. And when he passed away, all these people came out of the woodwork and with gratitude and wanted to thank, him and pay tribute to him. And it was just unbelievable. And I felt that that I wanted to honor him, and I wanted to celebrate him. And I felt again that I was in a unique position to be able to do that. And And so, with those two documentaries, really came from a very personal place. I had the relationships and I wanted to celebrate their lives. I wanted the next generation to know these people and learn from these people. And that was really what motivated me. Other projects are very different and what pushed me over the top, but those two are very clear.
Now, when you're working on a documentary, do you have an outline before you go in, or does it essentially unfold as you go along?
I love documentaries because I don't really know where I'm going.
am documentary films.
Yeah, it's in fact with Carol, with the documentary on Carol, I thought we were done, and then Carol was invited by Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS to perform in their big event in November. And we had already, I thought we wrapped. We had gone to Subway, and
that was Cordon. I was there. Yes.
Right. And then she decided, she said yes. And she was already 90 years old and she was going to perform and they were going to bring together, a lot of the Dolly the men over the years together to dance with her on stage. We were not done. We were going back in there and we were going to capture that. My gosh, and so I love documentaries take you in all sorts of places you didn't expect, and it isn't scripted. And
you were also at the Kennedy Center Honors, weren't you, as well?
Yes, and we were at the Kennedy Center Honors as well. Yeah. So, there are things that happen along the way and you just like, well, got to do that, got to go there. And, you lean in different areas you never expected to. And I love that about that kind of storytelling.
Now, you're very hands-on as a producer when you get involved in a project. What is it about being a producer that you absolutely love? And what do you dislike about being a producer?
Oh, wow. Well, what I love about being a producer is, it's kind of like being the CEO of that project, that show, that film. And you get to interact and collaborate with everybody. And I love that. I love that collaboration. And I think one of the most important things as a producer is to make sure that everybody gets on the same page and to help everybody land in one place so you're all telling the same story. And then as a producer, supporting that storytelling. And, whether you're talking to the costume designer or you're talking to the star or you're talking to the director, whoever you're talking to figure out how best to support them and help make the best show possible. And that it touches on absolutely everything is thrilling to me. You really, I don't take any of these projects very lightly. It's like all or nothing, all in, all hands on deck, big time. And it's also a wonderful collaboration and surrounding myself with people that I adore working with. And then the most exciting thing to me about theater, film too, but much more about theater is that audience, that audience that is experiencing that show. And you see them laugh and cry and, you see their lives change sometimes because they've experienced it. And that's just thrilling. It really is.
Does it get any easier for you?
Easier? No, I think in the opposite probably because I think that I feel so strongly with the world as it is that I've definitely been gravitating towards subject matter on stage and on screen that it's about changing the world and making the world a better place. And so it's taking on some of these projects because I just feel so strongly about telling these stories. They're hard. They're really hard. The Prom was a very happy ending here with the movie that's about to come out, but wow, was that 8 years of roller coaster intensity to try to get that show to Broadway, and with incredible people involved.
What was the biggest obstacle that you were facing getting that to Broadway?
Well, The Prom, for anyone who hasn't seen it and doesn't know about it, it's about two young girls, one girl in particular who wants to go to the prom with her girlfriend. And basically, there is just an explosion of protests, and they won't allow this girl to go with her girlfriend, and they decide to shut down the prom as a result. And in the meantime, there's this group of Broadway divas who are down on their luck, and they decide to swoop in to Indiana to save this girl and to help get her prom back. And it was also an extremely difficult experience because which this part made me so happy, because it was a blank page. It was an original idea by Jack Fertel that our incredible team, Bob Martin, Chad Begelin, and Matthew Sklar, brought to life from just this 2-line idea that Jack Fertel had. And so taking a show that isn't based on a movie these days and isn't based on the record, all the songs of a particular artist, but is purely an original story, is so hard. And then adding to that what this is about. It's about acceptance and tolerance and such important topics for our world right now. And we just hit a lot of walls. People didn't see it as commercial, and people didn't see it as necessarily as being urgent, surprisingly enough, because we had like midway through our process, we did a big lab, and it was a week after marriage equality passed, and people were saying like, no biggie, it's not a problem anymore. Now that we have marriage equality, it's so not a problem. And then it was almost like people were like, nah, you don't even need to do this musical, it's not urgent anymore. And then of course hardly that was the case. So I think fighting, people might think, well, is this really that serious a problem? And we were amazed to learn how many kids around the country now, in the world we're living in, are shut out of their proms because they want to take a same-sex date. It's absurd, and it is not just in certain parts of the country. It was everywhere when we did the research. And taking on this subject matter in a really fun, beautiful story.
What an amazing cast you had on stage, behind the scenes. And I want to find out where the show was in the trajectory of everything that happened and has happened since then, when the kiss happened at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Because I remember sitting on my sofa going, wow. I mean, across the country, did everything change instantly for the show at that moment?
We had opened November 15th, and the Macy's Day Parade was just like 10 days later. Mm-hmm. And we got rave reviews. Everything was going great. Everything was terrific. And then the Macy's Day Parade happened, and we were just so excited to have been able to participate and be on there.
And were you hands-on at all with the selection of what would be shown at the parade?
Well, yes, we were, the executives at Macy's and NBC came to the theater, and we performed the finale for them. We're all thinking like, they're never going to let this go on, because the finale includes a kiss. I don't want to ruin it for everybody. The tour will be coming out, in the movie too. But it's like not going to happen. They're not going to say yes to this. And they did. And I am so grateful to them and give them so much credit, because they went in eyes wide open, knowing that this was going to be a problem for some of their audience. And even when we were shooting, we were at the parade, and we thought, okay, they're going to put a giant turkey right over that kiss. It's just not going to happen. And until that moment where it actually happened, we never thought it would happen. And actually, it turns out that was the very first LGBTQ kiss on the parade ever. And what happened, as they anticipated, is there was a huge backlash. We had to, and there were very, very serious threats to our cast, to our incredible actors, Caitlin and Izzy. We had to get a lot of extra security. There was a lot. We were dealing with, Homeland Security. There was very serious ramifications of that, and the Macy's team and the NBC team, knew that this was going to happen. They just knew it, and they wanted to make it happen anyway because they felt that it was so important, and that kids at home that would see this, the first time that they're seeing themselves, that that it was just such an important landmark moment to let's just do this and then keep going, and we don't have to have it be a first anymore. And we were really proud to for that to happen. We were really, really proud of that. And it was it was our finale, and that's what happened. And it's a beautiful, fantastic number.
Well, the show has taken on a cult status, and so many people went time and time and time again. What was the deciding factor when the show closed? I mean, based on everything that I've read and heard from everyone, that it was doing great business. At least that's what I've heard. And everyone, I've never heard anyone who said, "Oh, I didn't like that show." What happened?
Yeah, well, I think the honest truth is that the subject matter was problematic for a lot of people, and that we couldn't have gotten, if I had to write them myself, I couldn't write myself. I couldn't write such great reviews, and we received a ton of nominations. We won the Drama Desk Award for Best Musical. It was just so many amazing things happened to that show. But at the end of the day, I do think the subject matter in the research that we did was problematic for people. And, if they're going to go see one or two shows a year, they didn't feel that this topic was for them. Maybe they didn't feel that, they weren't, didn't have any prejudice against it, but they just didn't feel, well, this isn't a show for me. I'm going to go see something else. And we just were not able to convince them that no, this is such a joyous, feel good, like wonderful, embracing movie, or a Broadway show for everyone. Everyone's going to love this. And we couldn't crack that. It's a very theater's expensive, and to be able to sustain our budget and our weekly nut, we couldn't price tickets at a high enough price to keep going. But with the film happening, it's really our Broadway show adapted for the screen, but it is 100% of our score, and 100% it's our story.
Unusual, very unusual.
It is unusual, but I think people will see it and experience it, and it's going to be thrilling.
How did the film come about?
We opened in November, and then Macy's Day Parade happened, and then in January, just a month and a half later or so, Ryan Murphy came to see the show. And Bill Damashki and I, who Bill's my producing partner on it, and we met with Ryan, and he just said, "I love this. I love this. I love this, and I want to make it into a movie." And you hear this, and it's like, that's great. That's really great. And, then you think, I'm never going to hear from him again. But it was amazing. He meant it. And he said, look, I want to change hearts and minds. I want the world to see this, and I want to make this happen. And I'd say 2 months later, the deals were done. And we, we had Meryl Streep coming to see the show, and Nicole Kidman, and all these amazing people. And then we were literally.
You had an amazing Broadway cast. You have an amazing
yes.
movie. And of course, as it goes with this, I mean, everyone stay away from the chat boards because a lot of people were up in arms that these great artists from the Broadway show were not going to transfer. And both you and I know why that happens. But what do you want to say to those fans out there?
I could not love our Broadway cast more. It's impossible to love them more. They were through the roof. Extraordinary. And for anyone who didn't get to see them, I'm so sorry you didn't have that experience, because they are incredible. There was, Ryan had a very clear mission. He wanted to make a big, giant musical film, and he wanted to change the world. And he had a clear vision right from the get-go, and he had to get permission. He had to get greenlit from the studio in order to make the film. And there was no chance that he would be able to get the money he needed to make the movie, or to get it greenlit at all, unless he had big name cast and film cast. Because, our cast is for theater is the top, they're as good as it gets for theater. They just were extraordinary. But they are not known in the film world. And what Ryan wanted to do is he was committed to the story and to the message of the movie. And he, as I said, he wanted to change hearts and minds. And so the only way he was able to get it greenlit is to have big names. And that's how that all evolved. And when I think of day one of the Prom, of course, I would want our cast to be able to have that opportunity. Of course, I couldn't wish that for all of them more. But day one, going back 8 years before opening night, it was about throwing our commitment, no matter how hard the journey was going to be, to telling this story and to trying to make the world a better place. It was 4 years later when these actors joined us, and we started in Jack Fertel had the idea in 2010, and I got on board. I joined as the producer with Bill in February of 2011. So it was a long time. Our first reading with cast was in 2015, and there were years of developing it with thinking about how do we help change the world. And so that being the first priority, if there's an opportunity to tell this story in a way that's going to, get the people to see this story that didn't come to the Broadway show because they didn't think it was for them, but you put this cast in front of them, they're going to go see it, then mission accomplished, the mission about making the world a better place.
There's a huge future to this show. And I think that as time goes on, my hope for the Prom is that stigma disappears. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
And that new audiences will be able to find it. The last project I think that I saw of yours was Halftime, which was a lot of fun at the Paper Mill Playhouse. And I know the road that led Lori Tanchin is a very dear friend. And I know all the stories leading to that. Are there projects running around in your head right now that you are looking forward to as time goes on?
Oh, so many. Yes, I love working in the theater community. I love working in film, and I just, love the collaboration and love working with all these artists. And so there are so many stories I can't wait to tell. And we're able through the Broadway Podcast Network to continue telling stories. I had a recording session this morning with Ramin Karimloo from Phantom of the Opera, who is one of our stars of a soap opera called As the Curtain Rises, which is a behind the curtain Broadway crazy soap opera. And so, it's nice to be able to continue during COVID to tell stories and create things and to work with just incredible talent. And I can't wait until we can all be together in person to do that.
Well, I want to go full circle. As I said at the beginning of it's 245 days. And obviously nobody has the answers, but how do you envision the theater coming back?
Well, I'm so excited about this vaccine news. That's really promising. I can tell you that I think it will be slow. It's not like we're gonna turn the lights on and everything's gonna be back the way it was. And I think we're gonna have to practice COVID in protocols for a while, because we want to make sure that everyone is protected on stage and backstage and in the audience. And we have to make sure that we're not taking any risks. But what I do know very well, because I've been working on a special project, is that, theater has continued on full on in Korea throughout the pandemic. And they have full houses, and they're, whether it's Phantom of the Opera or Cats or Kinky Boots, they have theater that is happening during COVID, and they have, certain protocol place that we have a lot to learn from how they did that. And I am just so inspired by how they've managed to navigate through that. They've closed stores, and they've closed restaurants, and they've closed sports gatherings and all sorts of things, but they haven't closed theater. And wow. And that is really an important thing to think about and to learn from. And so I really know that we're going to be back, and that there's a way to do it and keep everybody healthy. There has never been a transmission in the theater in Korea. They've never had a problem. So I know we can do it, and the sooner the better.
That gives us hope. Well, I can't believe this story, but you made it here. We did a full show, and I hope everything's okay. And thank you for doing this. You mean the world to me, and on so many levels. Thank you for all the work that you do. I want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in today. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, please go to my website, which is richardskipper.com. Sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to boost me in other markets. I want to let everyone know that tomorrow afternoon, my special guest is Robert Viagas, and we're going to be talking about the launch of a new magazine in the theater, Encore. And do you know about this story?
I do. I'm very excited. I think it's so needed. Very excited about it.
And I'm thrilled that Robert is doing this. And of course, he has a rich history with Playbill and so many books that are on my shelves that he's written. So I'm very excited to sit down and talk with him tomorrow. I end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and go to the third friend that pops up and reach out to them and just say, hello, how are you? I'm just thinking of you. Because as my dear friend David Friedman says, we're all in this together. We're just not in the same boat. I love that. Dori, I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say, either about anything we've covered today, anything we didn't cover that you want to talk about, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone at this time. And again, I thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you will continue to give. You are a true blessing in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Well, it's wonderful to spend some time with you. I'm a big admirer of yours, and I think it's fantastic. You've been bringing light to the world during this time, and so very grateful to you. And I just want to reiterate what we talked about earlier, that it is how important art is, and how it brings our world together. And it just represents to me and to everyone I know humanity, and that we just have so much ahead when theater returns, and that I hope that everybody will return in droves as soon as theater is back up, and you lose yourself to it. In the meantime, I just hope everybody stays very, very safe
and wear a mask.
And please wear a mask. Yeah. And come to the Broadway Podcast Network, because there's a lot of wonderful theater storytelling. And of course, everything Richard is doing is so fantastic. So,
and Dori, anything you're doing, please post it on my Facebook page. Have any of your podcasters do the same thing. I'm all about sharing the wealth. Thank you.
You're wonderful. Thank you, Richard, so much. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you.